strength coaches, like you have to be the most consistent person in that athlete's life. You see them the most. You don't control playing time. That's what I love about my job the most is like I can love on an athlete that's a stud. I can love on an athlete who's never had a minute of playing time. They could be great in the weight room. They could be a giraffe in the weight room. Have no body awareness, and I think that's the cool part about the job.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Kristen Flateau, which is, I just learned how to pronounce the last name correctly, so I'm glad we got it right. But you are a strength and conditioning coach. You know what? I'm going to stop this because I fucked up. I forgot to ask one more question. What job title would you like for me to introduce you as?
So my job title is strength and conditioning coach.
Strength and conditioning coach.
No
And what's the
assistant,
school?
no head, no anything. Yep. Edward Waters University.
Edward Waters. Okay, see? And then I literally was saying it. I was like, I totally forgot that. So my apologies.
No, you're good.
Edward Waters University?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, we'll restart. Sorry, Dexter. All right. What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Kristen Flateau, strength and conditioning coach for Edward Waters University. Kristen, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm stoked to have you. I've been able to follow you on social media for a little bit, so I've seen kind of some of the different things you post, and I think we're going to get along. So I'm excited for this podcast.
Great.
Well, can you just kind of give me a breakdown of your, background in strength and conditioning, what got you into strength and conditioning, where you have been with your career, and then what's led you to Edward Waters?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm probably one of the few strength coaches that did not play sports in college. Had the opportunity to play Division I softball and just fell out of love with the sport a little bit. I got hurt my senior year of high school. Had to play a different position, and I was like, I went from catching to playing second base. So being a part of every single play to then, you're just running around, every once in a while you get the ball. Fell out of love with it, and the school that I was originally going to go to, their exercise science program just wasn't the greatest in comparing to other programs. Knew I wanted to be something health and fitness. I remember going to my mom in high school and just crying and being like, I cannot do a 9 to 5. I hate dressing up. I am not I'm forced to wear dresses whenever I have to. And I remember I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So I went into college thinking physical therapy because that was the only other route, or athletic training that I was like, okay, that's the only other route that I really know of. Got to college, went to Gardner-Webb University in North Carolina, and they have a phenomenal exercise science program. And they had a bridge program where I could do in 5 years an undergrad in exercise science and a master's in strength conditioning. My summer before my senior year, so it was summer 2022, I did my internship at Elon University. Never stepped foot in a college weight room before that time frame. Wasn't even sure if I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. And man, I'll have to give Coach DeMarco so much props because the grace and just information that they gave me, Coach DeMarco, Coach Jordan, it was astronomical. Like I learned so much, really fell in love with the career during that internship. And I was like, you know what, this is where I want to be. Left Elon through that internship, went and did a internship at Gardner-Webb where I was a student at. So just helping out, and happened to work out to where I graduated with my undergrad in December. And then that January, our GA had left. He took a job over at Army, and they were like, yeah, do you want to, be the GA? And I was like, well, of course. So I was thrown right into it. Only had probably 6 months of any type of coaching experience, not really any programming experience. And they're like, yep, you have 5 teams of your own and assist with football. I was like, okay, sink or swim. Got thrown into the deep end. Probably drowned a couple times during that year where I was a GA. But I'm extremely grateful. I worked with Dylan Horn, he's now at Baylor. He was at ETSU, worked with Trey Lamb, so I got to see great football coaching. Worked with a bunch of different coaches, so getting that environment and that experience to start off my career was super, super beneficial in my opinion. Because it was like, okay, you don't have a lot of equipment. Gardner Webb's not a big school, not a lot of resources in that environment, and it was really like they just wanted somebody to be there, coach them, love on them, and I was like, I can do that. I love people, I can do that. Left Gardner Webb in December of 2023 and started at Coastal in January of 2024. Just happened to be in the right spot at the right time where the right people had the right connections. Still kind of crazy that I ended up there right out of my master's. Like I was 22 when I started working at Coastal. Um, so again, just maybe like a year and a half of experience under my belt. And I'm like, wow, like one, I'm blessed with this opportunity, but overwhelmed with this opportunity. Was at Coastal for about a year and a half and then left Coastal, wanted to try out something different, wanted to try out private sector. So went back home to Florida and worked in D1 training in Fort Myers and worked under three former NFL players like Jalen Watkins, Sammy Watkins, Trey Boston. Um, great people. And learned so much because it's such a different environment than the college setting. I mean, you get to work with 7 and up. Like I trained 6-year-olds in one-on-one sessions to I trained a 66-year-old baseball player who he traveled the country. He was a pitcher and all we did was shoulder care. I worked with physical therapists. I worked with, he was a quarterback for the Florida Gators. And so he just did nothing but quarterback training and throwing like with volleyball players and serving and spiking and stuff of that nature. And so learned a lot. I was there for about 10 months and then just recently started at Edward Waters University over Valentine's Day weekend.
Oh my goodness. So you really just started there.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Not even 2 months yet.
Oh,
A couple
wow.
days,
That's
it'll be 2
awesome.
months. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of questions I have, but I mean, the last one I'm very curious about. How's it going at Edward Waters?
Oh, I love it. It's I remember I did my interview back in December and I got off the interview, mind you, it was like an hour-long interview, Zoom call, 6 people from all different areas, the business department, of course, like athletic director, sport coaches, athletic trainer. And I remember getting off that interview and I was like, wow, like that is a culture program that I want to be at. Like everybody just it was so casual, just like this, like a conversation, just getting to talk about like what I love, which is the athletes and kind of my experience, my background. And I was like, you know what, that would be a great fit for me. Be closer to home, closer to parents, and just the work life balance is phenomenal, phenomenal. Um, Weekends are pretty much free. Like you go to sporting events, but I don't consider that work. To me, that's like the best part of the job is okay, I get to go and watch my athletes play. Um, Definitely is different though. It's a D2 HBCU. So going from my last college job at Coastal to this is it's not necessarily a culture shock, but it definitely is like, wow, like I'm grateful for what I had at Coastal. And just the visions and desire to grow at Edward Waters. The other coworker that I have, Devin Wilcher, like he's awesome. And he was an intern at Colorado. So we've both come from big D1 experience to coming here. And it's like, they don't know how good they could be, and I feel like we're in a position now where the athletic director pretty much is like, this is your general layout. I want you to have these 2 teams. I want these to be your 2 teams. Other than that, figure it out. If you guys want to go halvesies and go, you do strength days, you do speed days. If you want to completely split it, we're the same job title. Um, and they've really just given us a lot of flexibility to say, we don't know how to run a strength conditioning department. You guys have that availability to kind of take over and show us what it really could be. And that's been the most awesome thing is they're so open to all of our suggestions. And it's really just like going there with the mindset and showing them of like, listen, I want to be here. Like I care. I want to see this place be great. Like, these are all these ideas that we have. Like, this is the resources that we have. Let's play around. Let's rearrange some things, and it could be this much better without spending any money. Now you give us a little bit of money, give us a little budget, it could be this. And they've just been super open to it. So it's been a phenomenal transition.
That's really cool. And you know what? One of the things that I really like about kind of having that availability to grow is you've got the background, right? You, like you said, you've been at Coastal, you've been at Gardner Webb, you've seen how it works at Elon. You have a lot of these different experiences, and I think a lot of strength coaches, when they hear something like D2, hear okay, they're not going to be invested in strength and conditioning, right? It's going to be something where okay, they're going to probably hire a strength coach, but they might not need to see the same amount of growth in that department as, kind of like the stigma of like, okay, power four, where they're going to give you all the
Yeah.
money and everything, which is, just a blatant fallacy. It's just not
Yeah.
true. Right.
Yeah.
And you're living, breathing proof of that right now. But I think it's cool that you can bring your experiences, go to this school, and then bring these suggestions. And I like what you said too, because there's got to be a little bit of a realism there, right? We can find some ways to improve it without money,
Yeah.
because sometimes you're just not going to get everything that you want from a money standpoint. But there's definitely going to be ways, if we give a little bit of money, we can keep improving it. So I think that's very cool that you get to have that experience, especially a little bit earlier on in your career. Sometimes people
Yeah.
got to wait a while to kind of be called on for those, ideas or that kind of creative thinking. What are some things? Can you give me any examples of some things you've done so far?
Oh goodness. So it was funny. We hadn't even started yet. So like our official start date was February 16th, which is a Monday. And Coach Wilcher, he calls me on Sunday. Mind you, I'm at Miller's Ale House with my parents eating dinner because I'm trying to move into my apartment, and we're taking a break eating. And he's like, "Hey, there's at Edward Waters. They have a they have two weight rooms. So one of their weight rooms is the wellness center. That's like our big weight room. That's the fancy one that has the equipment and bands and all that stuff. And then we have one that's connected to our basketball gym where like our basketball and volleyball games are. We call that the dungeon because it's just strictly walls, dumbbells, barbells, plates, metal plates, not a lot of bumper plates. Like it is old fashioned for sure. And he calls me and he's like, "Hey, they have this basketball gym called JWJ. The football coach just took me over there and they have 3 hammer rows and 3 GHRs just sitting in there. Are you cool if we move them over?" And I'm like, wait. They weren't being used?" And he was like, "No, like they still have their wrappers on them." I was like, "No, no, no, no. Like bring those to the weight room." So, and it was simply just nobody had done snooping. Nobody had the desire to be like, "No, we're gonna get this done and we're gonna move these over." They have 3 double-sided racks in the weight room. 2 of the racks were up against a wall. So so you only had access to 4. So we completely rearranged the weight room. Now, mind you, a lot of our teams are in season right now, just men's volleyball, basketballs just got done, tennis, golf, all of those teams are still playing right now. So they came in and they're like, "Yo, what happened? Like, this looks like a completely different weight room." And they had a big cable machine stuck in the middle of the weight room. Dumbbells were in the middle of the weight room. And just the layout was like almost like you go into a YMCA. Like, that's that kind of the layout of like, it was not a college weight room. Now, like, you walk in and you're like, okay, looks like a college weight room now. So I would say that was definitely the biggest thing is just like going around snooping through different rooms and saying like, okay, like let's bring this over. Let's bring this over. Hey, assistant athletic director, can we if we provide the muscles, thank you, Edward Waters football team and coaches. Can we bring this equipment over? And they're like, yeah, just do it, you know? Um, and then I went through and I deep cleaned the other weight room because there's just plates everywhere. Because they hadn't had strength coaches in about like 4 to 5 months. So it was the sport coaches and to be fair, like sport coaches, it's not you would hope that if they're taking over the weight room that they would keep the weight room clean, but we both know that's not how that works. They care about their sport, they don't care about how clean the weight room is. Um, and the athletes, if nobody's going to enforce it, they're not going to do it. That's human nature. And so definitely coming in, we've changed a lot of policies. And like we just went to the athletic director and we're like, hey, we could do a lot more if we had 6 trap bars. We could do a lot more if we had clips that go on every single bar. We could do a lot more if all of our bands weren't broken. Every single band when we came in was broken and tied. And we had 3 foam pads. So we did ask to spend some money. And that was the nice part of like there was never, well, no, like you guys haven't done anything yet. Like we came in and changed the weight room up and athletic director walked by and she was already like, wow, like you guys have turned this around already, and so when we went, she's awesome. Miss Connor's great. And she's um very blunt. And she's like, y'all better not ask for anything. She's like, we've spent enough money on y'all right now. And we are both very blunt, me and Coach Wilcher. And we were like, no, you're just gonna have to tell us no, because we're still gonna ask. Like, we're gonna come back and like we just asked for 4 new benches yesterday. Like, and she was like, y'all just spent like $3,000 and y'all are already asking for more. And we're like, well, yeah, like, why not? The worst thing that can happen is you get told no. Um, and so that's been awesome. Is like going in and kind of already not even 2 months in, being able to transform the environment to make it feel like a college weight room. And even the athletes see it too. And like the sport coaches, they come in and they're like, wow, like you guys, and this is not to like toot our own horns by no means, but just use what we've seen and again, just use the resources that we have to make it even better, and just use our background and experience to say, like, this is what you guys have. This is how it was being used. Like, let's use it this way and see how it goes. And just the support that we've gotten has been amazing.
Well, you bring up a really good point at the end, right? Is, especially when new coaches are coming in, there's a certain aspect of physical change as well. There's going to be a lot of different philosophy and culture changes, but having a physical change is really important. And I think it shows a level of seriousness and a level of, hey, I'm buying in, so you better buy in here as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think back to when I first came into app, we have or the School and Boone, as you mentioned
Yep.
pre-show, instead of
School
Appalachian
moon,
State. Yep.
SIB.
We had the weight room I work out of is the basketball weight room. So volleyball, men's basketball, women's basketball, and the golf's train out of here. And I remember first coming in here and it was like a bomb went off, right? Like I remember coming in on the interview and I didn't really pay attention to it that much, right? Cause I was just like, hey, whatever. I just want to make sure we got the equipment that we need and everything like that. And then I remember the first day I came in here, she's my wife, now, but obviously at the time, my girlfriend was staying back in Texas. And so I had kind of a, 3-week period where I would just go in every day and I'd take a look around the weight room and I'd be like, what the hell are we doing here? On certain things, right? Like, I remember there were signs that were like, if you yawn in the weight room, it's 10 burpees. And that's
Yeah.
just like kind of the exact opposite of who I am. I'm not saying it's wrong, but, so took the signs down and then it was cleaning everything up, making sure everything was kind of orderly and put back in place. And then one of the biggest things we did was, ultimately change around the spacing a little bit. I'm a big on weight room space guy. I like as
Yeah.
much space as possible. And so we put all the bikes up against the walls, shifted around some dumbbells and a lot of different things. And it kind of cleared up the area a lot. And then we added in a fuel station. So there was no fuel station.
Nice.
There was nothing like that. So we added in a fuel station, then eventually added in a fridge, and got a lot of these different things going. And it's funny because you'll notice this after a couple years at Edward Waters, you'll see this, right? You'll have some people come in and then they'll kind of forget where it was, and so like I remember I didn't restock the fuel station, the night before one time. And one of our coaches comes in. He's like, what? No hard boiled eggs? We don't have any of these here. And I was like, hey man, I was like, remember 2 years ago you were coming in,
Yeah.
you never even came in here to grab snacks. All right. So
Yeah.
let's not forget, but let's be aware of what the changes are like. But again, it's cool. It's really fun to have that ownership of that process and, kind of change things around and make it what you want. It's really exciting. And I like what you said too about, it's a great lesson for everybody listening is, you have to ask your admin for things, and, even if they say don't ask them, like you said, the worst they can say is no. right?
Yeah.
And to me, if you don't continually ask for these things, they're going to think it's not that important,
Yeah.
right? And so if you bring it up when you feel it's like of the utmost importance at that time, and then you haven't had conversations about these things previously, the admin are kind of going to be like, well, this is the first I'm hearing about it, so is it really that important, right?
Yeah.
Versus continually bringing it up. I always like to say, a no is a future yes. You just got to keep on
Yeah.
asking, right?
Yep.
So I think you got a great process building. What's okay? So this is just kind of a fun little deal, right? You have, in 2 years, where would you like your weight room to be? Are there any specific, projects or any like really cool things that you want to bring in?
Oh, goodness. So, like I mentioned, we have 2 of those weight room areas. One is in our basketball gym. The goal is 'cause I'm obviously, we're on a podcast, you can't tell. I'm 5'2", not the biggest person in the world, and our racks I can pull with one arm. Like, they in that weight room, they're just so old. Our, assistant athletic director, he's also the head baseball coach. He was at Edward Waters, played baseball there, and couple days into us working there, he's like, "Yeah, um, those benches and, like, dumbbells and barbells, like, those are the same ones that we had when I was here." Reggie, I'm not calling you old, but I'm just gonna let that be how it is. Um, he's been coaching baseball a while, so I'll leave that where it's at. Um, but definitely, like, our plan is, so we have a, fueling station that is also in that basketball gym, has not been really used in the last couple of months because there hasn't been strength coaches, hasn't had people that wanna take it over and actually run it, keep it maintained, and stuff like that. The hope is that eventually we can transform that dungeon weight room into a mobility, stretching, um, area where that's going to be your feel good, your recovery stuff, and then you have your fueling station because that's where they have like their study halls and stuff of that nature. Um, and then hopefully we can get to a point where the other weight room, we have some cheap turf that's kind of laid down. So our weight room that we use primarily was an old cafeteria. So there's like this room in the middle where they used to like distribute all the lunches and stuff like that. So the plan is hopefully that we can get more racks in that weight room because it's a good space. It's about the size of the weight room that I had at Gardner Webb, truthfully. And so it's like at Gardner Webb, we had 12 racks. So it's just a matter of like getting the unnecessary, like big box gym cable machines out of the way. Half of them are sticky, they don't work anyways. Um, and bringing in more racks. The wellness center gym is right outside of the football field. So really traditionally, like we have access to the turf field. And so we don't really need that turf space. So hopefully getting rid of that turf, putting in more racks to making it to where, you can get bigger football groups training. You can get baseball team kind of flowing a little bit better. You can get your 2 smaller teams in their training. Um, that's the goal. I always have the phrase like Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. Like I live off of that, knowing like we have so much desire for change. Obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but we're taking the steps, we're taking the initiative to kind of be like, my coworker yesterday, we were even talking about changing the back room in the dungeon weight room to a women's soccer locker room area because they have no locker room. And it's like, okay, they're in their like 5th or 6th year as a program. They're getting into a conference soon. Um, and so it's like, think of how much better you could recruit, if you had a locker room space for the girls, um, and painting a picture for the athletic director of like, this is what it could be. This is think of how much more you could get if, you brought in more athletes and stuff like that. So definitely just trying to admit as much change as we can, but understanding that as a strength conditioning staff, like we don't have a budget, and building relationships with the head sport coaches and just saying like, listen, every team gives us like a couple $100. Think about how much more we could help your team. And so we're definitely trying to work some things out. Hopefully within the next 2 years, we'll have a budget, be able to get that fueling station up and running again and get donors to kind of donate food and stuff like that. So definitely high expectations, but that's how I would prefer to be. Shoot for the stars, land on the moon, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm excited to kind of see the changes that you make over the years. It sounds like we're going to have to do a follow up episode in like
100%.
3 years. Well, if Samson's dumb enough to keep letting me host this podcast, then I'll check back in 3 years and we'll kind of go through all the changes that you've made.
100%.
Yeah. Well, what's it like to be able to have another coach that you can collaborate with on these ideas? Because a lot of times at Division two, Division three schools, there might be one coach who's kind of running everything. Even in my experience here, I was kind of given the Holmes weight room, and it was like, all right, you do what you want. And there was nobody who really also kind of had that ownership piece. How's it been to collaborate with somebody who also has the same vision as you?
It's awesome. Definitely going into this job, like him and I were both, it was one of those things where we had followed each other on social media for a really long time, just being strength coaches, you follow people and it was funny. I had posted like, oh, I'm going to Edward Waters and he DMs me on Instagram is like, yo, I just accepted the other position. And it helps to know our athletic director and just athletic admin in general were very transparent with us when we came in. And it's like, we've already invested a lot into these positions. The previous positions had been a head strength coach and an assistant strength coach. And they just found that at that level, there was a lot of clashing, a lot of butting heads and stuff like that. So me and him are same job title, same level, and everything. Um, so there is no, excuse me for saying this, but like pissing contest of like, well, it's my way or the highway, or I have these teams, I'm head person. We collaborate really, really well. We interviewed, we've been told we've interviewed pretty much exactly the same of like, we want to be here. His family lives in Jacksonville. My family lives an hour away. So we both had a desire to be there because it's also at that level. People have used it as like a stepping stone, which no fault to them, but we have both been at that higher level and we want to be at the D2 level. And I think that's been the best part is neither one of us is like, okay, well, I'm just going to use what we got and kind of just suck it up and deal with it. Like both of us have a desire to be like, no, like they have this, like let's try this. Um it's been super awesome. I've definitely never had a um as close of a collaborative atmosphere as that before because it is just the two of us. At Coastal, we had, I believe, like 8 coaches when I left. So just more heads, more opinions. It's harder to kind of collaborate all together as a group. Like you all have the same intentions of my in mind, and same goals of like we just want to make athletes bigger, faster, stronger, and the best that we can be. And here at this D2 level, it's like, well, it's just the two of us. Like it's two of us against the world, and let's fight it together. And it again, like it is nice that we've both been at he was at Colorado, I was at Coastal. Like, so we've been at the big levels of like, and we've also been at the smaller D1 levels. He's been at other HBCU schools. And so it's like he brings experience I don't have. I bring private sector experience that he doesn't have, but yet we both have similar experiences to where it's like we collaborate and can bring ideas of like, well, we don't really need this, but think about if we used our funds in this way, of like spacing wise and just with the quality of our racks. I love TRX straps, but we have no place that they would be safely put up, And so, and that was something like I live, breathe, die by TRX. I love them. And he was like, well, Kristen, like, we don't really have a place to put them. And I'm like, you're right. Like, I wasn't even thinking about that, like if I'm doing an inverted row on a TRX, I'm gonna pull the rack over. You're right. And so that's been nice of like, he'll have an idea and I'll kind of be like, okay, well, what about this? And just being able to bounce ideas off of each other, it's been great.
Yeah, and I really like what you said too about, you guys are kind of from a structural level on the same playing field, right? There's no, one's the head and the other, kind of has like, or some person has the final say. It's funny, we're going through GA interviews right now, and I've been the one kind of leading everything, and then we've done some interviews with multiple people. And multiple strength coaches on staff, and I'll say I really like this guy, right? And then the other two assistants are kind of like, I don't really know. And then they're always like, well, it's your final say. And I'm like, no, I don't, like if 2/3 of us don't like the guy and I like the guy, then like it's obviously clearly not the right choice. Right. And
Yeah.
so it can be interesting with that dynamic sometimes where, one person's kind of the director and the other person's an assistant director. Like, they kind of feel like, can I really be 100% honest? And it's like, yes, like for me personally, yeah, I want to hear it. And I've been at
Yeah.
other schools where they personally don't want to hear it. But it makes it a lot more productive. And I think it makes it a lot more of a fun working environment. So I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Well, you earlier you mentioned something that I thought was pretty profound, right? You were talking about your experience, with starting off being a GA, and they said that they just need somebody to be there for them, and need somebody who loves them, right? And you said that's kind of your thing, right? And you're there to love people, and you're there to be there for people. And I think truly at the end of the day, that's like 90% of strength and conditioning, and and that's why I like this podcast because we talk a lot about, the art side and being there for people instead of just the science side. What does that mean to you just to kind of be there for people and to just show up for these athletes? What does that mean?
So it really goes back to when I was first starting as an intern at Gardner Webb, the director of strength conditioning, who he ended up leaving, Coach Whaley. I literally only had like my initial like, yes, you can be an intern. Um, like 2 weeks before I was supposed to start my internship at Gardner Webb, he ended up leaving and taking another job. And but he said something to me, and that was one of my only conversations with him ever. And he was like, strength coaches, like, you have to be the most consistent person in that athlete's life. You see them the most. You don't control playing time. That's what I love about my job the most is like I can love on an athlete that's a stud. I can love on an athlete who's never had a minute of playing time. They could be great in the weight room. They could be a giraffe in the weight room. Have no body awareness, and I think that's the cool part about the job. And that really stuck with me is like you got to go in and be a consistent person because head coach, let's be real, isn't always going to be consistent, especially now, transfer portal, NIL, things of that nature. Like they want the next best kid that's going to benefit them. You know, our job is to love on them as they are now. How do I make you better now? Not, well, you're not benefiting me, so I'm not going to treat you well. Not saying that's how it is, but let's be real. Sometimes that's how it is. And just being that consistent person in their life and showing up as the same person every single day. Yeah, I'm a very relational person. That's why I think I fit better in the D2 sector and private sectors because you can build those relationships a little bit more because they aren't the most talented um, athletes in terms of they're not, how do I word this? They are not the athletes that are big headed, like, oh, I'm making more money than you because I'm getting paid to be here. Um, they really just want you to show up for them. Like I'll never forget my first weekend on the job working at Edward Waters, and there was a softball game. Mind you, the softball field's about 15 minutes away from campus. Um, and I drove to their softball game, and they saw me sitting on the bleachers, and they were like, Coach K, what are you doing? Come to the dugout with us." And I'm like, "Okay." And so they come get me. I go to the dugout, and just everybody was like, "Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, this is my job. Like, I'm here to support you guys. Like, I'm here to show up for y'all." And and it was really eye-opening to me of like, wow, they've never had someone just show up, and just be there and support them. And or if they had, like, it wasn't consistent, you know? And just being able to I'm a very relational person. Coach Quinn at Coastal, he was my director. Um, as I did my exit interview, he was like, "Empathy is your superpower," and I've taken that to heart because I really do believe that was the most true thing anybody has ever said to me. almost to a fault of sometimes like sitting in those football staff meetings and just hearing them talk about certain players. And, it's like, dang, like I really love that kid. Like he's a great person. He might not be a great football player, but he's a great person, and you could see how that affected me as a person. Um, and not necessarily as a coach, but as a person, like my heart just went out to them. Um, and so being at this level where it's like, and I was even talking to two of the football players 2 days ago before they went to football practice, and they were like, how does it feel to be a female strength coach, like working here at a HBCU, like D2, like you work with football, like how does it feel? And it's like, I bring a different energy. Like I am not the type of person, I'm not going to cuss at you. I'm not going to call you out your name. Um, but now granted, there's a line where it's like, if you're doing something wrong, like I'm gonna call you out on it. But I am not gonna cuss you out. I'm not gonna get in your face. I'm not gonna point my finger in you, like all that. Like that's just not me as a person. Cause if somebody were to do that to me, I'd probably cry. And I know that. And so I don't dish it out because I know I can't take it. Um, and and they were just, and I was looking at them, I'm like, listen, I am a 5'2" white female coming into this position. And I know that I know I've never played a snap of football in my life. So if you're doing something wrong and I come to you and I start cussing at you and just being disrespectful, I'm like, you're going to be disrespectful to me. I'm like, because who am I to come tell you all of this? Now, if I come at you in a polite way and be like, hey, bro, you're not supposed to do that. We do have a rule in the weight room. If you yawn, it's 10 push-ups. We do have that rule. And I
Sorry for bringing that
actually
up
no,
earlier.
no, 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 I love it. Because it's funny because the athletes are like, "Why do we have to do this?" Because that is something new that we brought in. And, I was like, "Just 'cause," you know? And then I spiced it up and I was like, "If I catch you again, it's another 5. So if I catch you twice in one section, then it's 15." Um, and they've gotten a lot better about it. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, "It's just body awareness." Or are you gonna yawn on the field? Like, you don't wanna yawn on the field, right? And, and so I'm like, "Listen, like, there's some guys that they're hotheads, and I know they are." And so I approach them a little differently of like, "Hey, man," like, almost make it a joke, like, "You tired? I know you just yawned, you know what you're supposed to do when you yawn." Um, and it really is just about that relationship and the rapport aspect, and especially coming in and not even being there 2 months. We came in at a really weird time, pretty much like middle of a semester, middle of a school year. And so it really is like, you gotta build rapport and you gotta build rapport fast because at the end of the day, you're losing time with the athletes. Like we had spring break, we had today off for Good Friday, we have Monday off. Um, we have those study days where we can't do anything with the athletes and it's all optional, and it's like we don't have a lot of time to waste. You haven't had a strength coach in 4 months. um we've got to lift weights and we've got to lift it hard, and how do you go into that situation with no relationship and then demand the athletes to do that? Like you can't. And that's one thing that when I was at Gardner Webb, Coach Joe Ken, he came into our weight room one day and he was telling me his son Peter, when Peter started at I think SMU, he just showed up to like swim practice one day and nobody had ever done that before. Nobody had just showed up and watched them practice, and that really stuck with me of like, you know what? It really isn't about doing all these fancy things, the fancy equipment, like all of that. It's just about keeping it simple and letting the athletes know like I'm here for you. Like I keep snacks in my office. They know if my door is unlocked, if it's open, you can come in and get some food. I got stuff to make peanut butter and jellies. I got plates and knives. Like make yourself some food. You need to sit down on my couch and talk. Like I'm here. Um, and just being that additional resource because at this level, especially, like you don't have a lot of resources. You know, your sport coach is trying to figure out, okay, how do I get an assistant coach? How do I bring in 10 more athletes? Like I have 12 to 14 soccer players right now because some are dual sport athletes playing tennis. And the president wants them to have 25, and so it's like the sport coach is busy. She's recruiting. She's doing phone calls and stuff like that. So it's like those athletes need to feel like they have somebody they can go to outside of our poor one athletic trainer, who's already swamped with all the athletes and stuff like that. And so um, that's where this level I think fits me perfectly because it's like I can be that for them. Um, I can show up, I can be there, I can demand, of like, listen, in this 1 hour, we're gonna train really, really hard. After that, you can come to my office. We can um, shoot the shit, like we can do all that. But in this 1 hour, like I need you locked in. I need you to focus. We got to get this done. And I think that it just stems with that respect thing, building rapport quick, and just showing up, just being there, letting them see you at the games, whether you know what's going on at the game, or not. Like I don't really know what's going on at tennis matches, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna support men's volleyball. I'd never watched men's volleyball before, and let me tell you, it's intense. Um, and even the head coach was like, "Thank you so much for coming." And I'm like, "Of course, like this is my job." Like, little does she know, next semester I'm gonna be like, "Yo, can I sit on your bench with you?" Like, I'm tired of sitting on the bleachers. Like, I wanna be on the sidelines with you guys. And just them seeing how much the athletes and the sport coaches seeing how much you wanna be involved, I think it just goes a long way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of really, really good points there. And, I think one thing that you mentioned that's really interesting is that the strength coaches kind of have a little bit of a different relationship because, like you said, there's no playing time, there's no talk about NIL, there's none of this, like, okay, if the conversation doesn't go well, is it going to hurt, basically how am perceived or, what my availability is going to look like on the field or on the court. So it kind of breaks down this initial barrier and allows you to have a little bit deeper and a little bit of a stronger relationship. And I agree. That's why I love being the strength coach too. Because the last thing I want to do is go recruiting and talk about money and talk about, all this different stuff that I just have no interest in. Instead it's like these
Mhm.
relationships that you mentioned building are really fun. And I also like the fact that you mentioned the respect piece too, right? Like, I remember starting off in football, and I felt like I kind of had to fit in with how the coaching style was at a couple places that I've been, right, where it was, very in your face, very kind of militant style, very, like it's my way or the highway. And I remember, like, as an intern, having to do this, right? And I was like, I don't know these guys, like,
Yeah.
like in they're all bigger than me. They couldn't care less, like the same with you. Like, they know I played football in high school, but like there's no meaningful, stuff past high school. So like, they couldn't care less what I'm saying. And all of a sudden now, like, they're just gonna be like, that guy's a jerk. Like, I don't like hanging
Yeah.
out. I don't want to listen to him, right? Versus if you come at the relationship with a certain level of respect, and like you said, some athletes are hotheads, and you just got to know who you're working with. You can have much better conversations that are also productive, right? Where you
Yeah.
can actually see results and you can see the change, which is kind of the whole point of strength and conditioning at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a firm believer of like if if you can't get the athletes to buy in, then you could have the best program in the nation. But if the athletes aren't bought into it because they think you're a jerk, you're doing it all wrong. You're not going to see any results and any growth and development from your phenomenal program. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to care.
1,000%, and they couldn't care less. I mean, quite
Yeah,
quite honestly. So, yeah, it's very fun. That's why this job is fun because we just get to do the relationship building stuff, right? And then you get to watch
100%.
people grow. And I've got to imagine too with the D2 level. I don't know. I guess I'm curious about this. Like, is there a lot of talk about the transfer portal? Is there a lot of talk about kind of NIL, or is it a little bit more like how it was before the transfer portal, where it's kind of, if I'm coming here, I'm going to try to be here for 4 years.
I think it hasn't gotten too crazy at the D2 level yet. There's definitely, like, for example, basketball season just got over, so they're going through exit meetings and stuff like
Hmm.
that, and so people are leaving. Um, but there's not, like, the demand of, because like, at Coastal with our football team, because I assisted with football, I was like, "Well, if you don't pay me this, I'm gonna leave because so and so is offering this," you know? And they don't have that there yet, it's more of like, "Coach, I'm not playing. I wanna play. I wanna get film." And I tell my athletes, at this level all the time, and I would told my high school athletes this and my JUCO athletes, at D1 because I was contracted to train Florida Southwestern's men's and women's basketball team, which is a JUCO down there. And I would tell them all the time, like, I want to see you go D1. Like, I want to see you grow, and I'm going to give you every single resource we can. Um, and again, I think they understand, like, at this level, they don't necessarily have the money to go and throw it around, and I hate to use the word bribe, but bribe players to stay, bribe players to come, and it really is like, no, I love the game. Like, I just want to play. And then obviously, like, okay, coach, I'm not getting playing time. Like, I'm not having fun. That's kind of the conversations I've heard. Now, again, I've been here 2 months. So some of those conversations I'm sure have yet to be had. And like, there's definitely still like one of our football players, he's um like, we know that FAU is trying to get him. Like, we know that. We know that a lot of our guys, like, they're big, they just didn't really have film, coming out of high school, and they played a year, they got great film, but they stayed, and so people are trying to recruit them away, and it's more here about, like, let's build a great culture. I'm gonna give you that playing time, you know, and then if you're not happy, then we'll have those discussions, but I definitely think it helps that the athletes kinda know, like, okay, they don't have the resources to pay us thousands of dollars. Um, and it really is just about the love of the sport, kinda how it was before NIL and transfer portal and things of that nature.
Yeah, I bring it up just because of our conversation about those relationships, and I've noticed that at our level, it hurts those relationships,
Mm,
because um, it's tough. Like, you can have high quality relationships. There's somebody who is transferring out for us who's awesome, and we spent 3 years together, which is way more than I thought I'd get with him, right?
yeah,
But we were hoping for one more year, and it's tough because the money's always kind of in the back of their mind, right? And there's so many lies too. It's crazy,
oh,
right?
yeah,
Like lies amongst teammates about who's getting paid what at every
yeah,
school that I've spoken with, right? Like, I mean, I could sit here and tell you, hey, App State's paying me 500,000, to be their strength coach. And, you could, with that, if you didn't know the other salaries of other places, you'd be like,
yeah,
damn, Connor's getting paid 500,000, and
yeah,
it's a complete lie. Like, so there's always kind of this in the back of the mind, like there's this money aspect that I feel like kind of hurts, how deeply you can develop these relationships. And then the athletes are pretty transient. There's not,
yeah,
there was one player I've had in my time in app that I had for 4 years. And what's funny is it worked out for him. He's in the NBA now, right? And so
yeah,
like it's funny how that works because people sometimes think it's the opposite way, is moving as much as possible is what helps you, but sometimes staying and kind of being the guy at a specific place is what helps you too. But I was just curious about it, because I'm a relationship based coach as well, and it can suck sometimes, So I'm
oh, yeah,
glad to hear that your experience has been really positive at D2. That's exciting for me. Again, this is something in a couple years we're gonna have to circle back and double check on this topic as well.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure, like, Edward Waters is growing tremendously. So Edward Waters was Florida's first HBCU.
Mm.
So it's got rich, rich history. And I believe, like, the number's like 130%, or something over 100%, but they've grown, like 130% within the last, like, 2 years. And so it is a growing program. Like, we're adding women's flag football, in the fall. And so I'm sure that as the school continues to grow and things of that nature, it's inevitable, with college athletics right now. And they just transitioned to a D2 school not too long ago. They've only been D2 for about 2 years now, because they were state school, they were college, JUCO kind of level. So it's definitely, it'll be interesting to see in 3 years where that is and stuff of that nature. I hope it's not too far from where it is now. But obviously, reality will check in at some point.
Yeah, no doubt. But again, like I said, we'll circle back and we'll see. We'll catch up on all these updates. We'll both have to listen to this episode again to
Yeah.
remind ourselves of what was going on. Well, okay. Well, I've got one final question for you. What is your favorite ghost flavor? I've been seeing you drink your ghost, so I know there's a lot of different ones. What's your favorite one?
Ooh, so this one is the orange. I'm sipping on the orange cream one right now. But like we mentioned before we started recording, I got 2 cases. from GNC, the peaches. I
Yep.
love the peaches. I'm hurt because I live right around the corner from a Wawa, and Wawa has stopped carrying Reigns.
Oh,
I know, and they replaced it with Blooms, which I'm a caffeine connoisseur. So
yeah.
like if it's caffeinated, I'll probably drink it. Um, but just something about the Reigns, like every once in a while, like you need that like I'm about to like scratch my face off, with so much caffeine running through my body. But no, the peach ghosts are right now like my absolute favorite. The orange cream's a close second though.
That's a good pick. I love the peaches is my second. I go the Welch's cranberry.
That's
Great.
good.
That's a good one.
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
and that one
That's
I
a
get
good one.
excited about that one now. So, but it's tough because we don't have any Wawas, which I'm absolutely sad about because I grew up and spent a lot of time in Philly. And I grew up in upstate New York. I don't know why I said
Hmm.
that, but I spent a lot of time in Philly. I went to school there, and we had a ton of Wawas out there. We've got Sheets out here, and it's just not the same for me.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to a Sheets.
It's kind of lame, and everybody's going to tell you that Sheets is better, and I'm sure I'll get some comments from the listeners that Sheets is better, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Wawa's way better, and so the gas station near us only carries like 3 flavors, and then the Sheets only carries like 2, and so
Oh no,
it's
see, Wawa
depressing.
has so much more, so much
Exactly.
more.
Exactly. And better sandwiches. The food's actually,
Oh yeah,
we could go
yeah,
on for 50 minutes about this one. So I'm going
yeah, yeah,
to stop myself there.
yeah.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on. Seriously, it was a really fun episode and it was really great to hear about your experiences. I know you said your Instagram name is complicated. We'll find a way to put it in the show notes. But if anybody wants to reach out to you or kind of hear more about your experiences or question you about anything that they heard on the podcast, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my Instagram's a great way. Um, it's my name, and this is the background to my Instagram name. Okay, my name, Kristen Flateau. You can put numbers in my name. So Chris, so it's like KRIS, and then the number 10, Kristen, and
Boom.
then FL8 Flateau. So that's the background to my Instagram name. So that's a great place to reach out. Obviously I'm on Edward Waters like athletics website, so they can email me there. But that's kind of boring. So no, definitely Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Wherever you find me, you can reach out. I don't mind sharing phone numbers or anything like that. Obviously, I'm not gonna just blurt it out over the
It's a
podcast,
great call. Great call. I respect that
but
decision.
no, definitely like feel free to reach out. I don't know how much information, quality information I could give, but I love to talk. So I love to talk shop, love to meet new people. So feel
I,
free.
I would disagree. I think you give some very high quality information. Like I said, it was a great episode. So
Thank you.
I think you could certainly help out. Well, seriously, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.